The following podcast is sponsored by the animation studio Tonic DNA. You're listening to the Story-Driven Arts podcast, where the visual arts and storytelling come together. I'm animation director and your host, Todd Schaefer. If you're a student looking for a good school to teach you art and animation, where do you begin? What should you know about choosing an art or animation school? My guest today is an instructor in the animation program of the Mel Hoppenheim School of Cinema at Concordia University. His name is Valery Mihalkov. Valery came to Concordia to teach after many successful years of making a living as a fine artist and working in the animation industry at studios such as Cinar and Cinegroup, where he was awarded an Emmy for his work on Sagwa. Valery's reputation as an artist and instructor is well known in the Montreal community. When my daughter was a major in the drawing and painting program at Concordia, she added a minor in animation just to be able to take classes taught by Valery. I invited Valery to be my guest because as an employer and as someone who has reviewed many hundreds of portfolios and reels for the past 25 years, I've become increasingly frustrated by how art and animation schools have been preparing their students. This is episode 4.
The craft is kind of gone. And the craft, that's fine with the technology. The point is that what the craft teaches is a discipline.
Yeah.
And that's what I find that is lacking lately in the work and the personalities of the young artists.
That's true. That's so true. When I was talking to some of my art friends in Maryland who followed Henry Hinchy, one of the things they brought up was the character of the artist itself. You know, we don't think about that as being part of the equation.
Well, again, I'm not. I have my point of view. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. I just would like to share it with you.
Yeah, which is why you're here.
Yeah, exactly. But it starts, in general, it starts from very early age.
Yeah.
The first, second grade, third grade.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a student, we used to write cursive handwriting.
Yeah.
And for a kid, of course, it's not easy. And maybe nobody's going to use it nowadays. Actually, kids can even write.
Yeah, that's right. They're not teaching it.
However, the point of all of this is a discipline, to be meticulous, to be persistent, right? Even stubborn, if you wish. Yeah. To say, what? I can write A, B, or C properly? Yeah. And we used to be judged by the prettiness of your handwriting.
Right. I know, that's true.
If it's sloppy, you say, okay, this person has problems.
Yeah, right.
Not reliable, at least.
Yes. No, that's for sure.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's been interesting to me from my vantage point, especially in Montreal. There's this huge Bulgarian contingent that all came out of the same school, it seems like, over in Bulgaria. And all of them are fantastic artists. At whatever angle that they've taken, they were developed with a fantastic discipline of art that you don't find being taught in the schools here, generally, I find. Except in few pockets here and there. And you would be one of those, and that's why when I learned about you, my daughter, she went to school with you, so I told her you need to be meeting Valery as much as possible.
You can, don't worry about the pronunciation, it's all good. Yeah.
You need to be with him as much as possible, getting as many critiques as he'll give you and getting every class he's teaching. Yeah. And even when I went to school in L.A., I came out of film school, went to Los Angeles, because I knew the art schools were not going to teach me what I wanted, what I needed. So I went to film school. And in LA, when I got my job at an animation studio, the animators took me under their wing and they would say, you need to take this class from these instructors, and that's it. They would control it for me like that. And that's what taught me the same things that you guys are teaching, I'm sure.
Well, there is still, in Europe, there are still schools which are pretty firm when it comes to at least a few years of classical education before you become an independent artist. And what I've noticed here, at least, I'm not in a position to criticize the schools or the teachers, but there are certain things which are ignored, and I completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
One of them is, I ask my students, okay, so how have you been taught so far? And say, well, just draw or paint what you see. And I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
You see as much as you know.
That's right.
Because there are so many optical illusions, so many spatial perceptions, which if you're not familiar with, then you won't be able to read properly the space, the volume, the light, proportion, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's difficult for the young artists to learn a lot of this material, but it's the first step.
It's the first step,
and
it's got to be repeated. It's got to be a part of their system their whole way through.
It's very simple. Yeah. You can write poetry without knowing the alphabet.
That's right.
Period. At least couple of years. And then when I'm not saying that all of the artists should be absolutely perfect when it comes to realistic expressions. However, they have to know the rules before they break them.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's a chaos.
Right. Like music, you can't do the same thing with music.
Exactly. Yeah. Or even science. If you don't know the numbers, how are you supposed to solve the equation?
That's right. Yeah, that's very
And
true.
it's unfortunately, I think what happened. Again, I have to probably hit the books to figure out what happened in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. How this generation of artists took advantage of the new trends, which were created, by the way, by artists who are classically educated. And there were some of them were even Andy Warhol has fantastic drawings and illustrations before you move to the pop art.
Right.
And then all these generations suddenly decide, oh, it's so easy, you just express yourself.
Right.
And perhaps these kind of thoughts penetrated some of the art schools. And that's why some of them abandoned the classical approach.
It could
the
be
systematic classical approach.
I was recently at an animation festival in Ottawa, and we were doing a career day where we were reviewing portfolios of graduates from art schools and animation schools in the States. This year we saw nobody who showed much of promise in animation. There was a few background designers and layout background people who looked promising. But for the most part, it was appalling to see the lack of just basic ability to draw. It wasn't even expressive or anything. It was just lack of basic drawing skills, doing something as simple as Preston Blair's kind of style of animation. They couldn't even do that. And these are graduates who spent a lot of money, 4 years of their life in a school being taught this kind of thing. And to me, it's not only heartbreaking, it's almost criminal that these schools can charge this kind of money and then produce students consistently to not be equipped for an artistic career.
Well, that's another topic which, again, I feel uncomfortable to discuss. It's what the education should be.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that in many schools, in some countries, some states, some cities, it's a business, it's not real.
That's right.
I remember when we applied to the art schools, especially to get into the art academy, it was as hard as to get into a medical school or a law school.
Right. It was very hard to get into the schools.
Yeah. You have the exams. Yeah. Very limited amount of students were accepted.
Yeah.
I know at that time Bulgaria was a communist. There was some bunch of young artists who were the daughters and sons of party members who were just managed to sneak in, but
most
overall,
of the guys,
overall it was very, very
most of the Bulgarian artists I talked to here, it took them a few attempts to get into school, and then they'd have to go study in order to get into school.
It was it was very tough, my school, it was the high school, which was fusion, something between high school and college, because it was 5 years. Normally the high school is 3 years,
right,
and then
4 years in the States.
Well, in the States,
here it's 3 years,
like a long time ago.
Yeah.
So basically, when you graduate, you obtain a certificate to teach kids, though, art classes for kids, age 6, 7 to I think it was 10, 12.
Right.
Not teenagers. It was, and the problem was very harsh. We used to have between 2, 3 to 4 hours. I don't remember exactly, but easily 4 hours of drawing once a week, 3 hours or 4 hours of painting once a week, then composition, graphic design, printmaking. So basically, the day was split into, you have the art subject, and the second part was the other subject, math, history, chemistry, physics, even astronomy. And music.
Yeah, cool.
And so it was a long day. Now, of course, most of the students weren't very happy with all of this, because, as an artist, you rather spend your time drawing, painting, or sculpting. But what I liked, it was a little bit too long, but what I liked is that at that time that everybody had a chance to try all these different forms of art.
Right.
And to elevate their skills to a certain level. Because, look, it's very simple. If you're a good sculptor, most probably you can draw very well, because you deal with volumes, proportions, ratios, and so on.
Right. I remember when I went to art school, not art school, film school, but I took a few art classes. I ended up somehow, I don't know how I got in there, but I was in the calligraphy class. And I thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. I would have never, ever thought of choosing this, but I'm doing calligraphy, and it was really a lot of fun, and I learned a lot in it.
Even later on in the art academy, which was basically designed to guide you to become an independent artist with your own philosophy and kind of supported by unique aesthetic, visual aesthetic. We still had to, we took calligraphy. Actually, it was font making, then we had the printmaking, and the most important, many years of art history. I asked my students basic things about art history.
You have to have that language. It's not just about knowing how to draw things. You have to be able to have that whole library of visual art, even more contemporary stuff, that informs what you're doing and gives you the ideas.
Well, in many cases, a lot of students think that they reinvent the wheel, and I said, look, has been done,
right? That's right. And you build off
back
that.
And check out, And what can I say? It's not easy. I think that before the university, most of the students should have at least 3 years of very disciplined, systematic art education. Meaning you start from A, because I find that most of the schools are a little bit chaotic and very sporadic. They don't follow a firm system. And starting with simple shapes, forms, then gradually moving into reading the space properly, giving different types of composition, creating different color harmonies.
I got 4 children. They're all in the arts. except my second's in filmmaking. But Tristan, he wanted to go into the animation program because he wants to do character design, and mostly for games. And we went to the portfolio day there, and the painting instructor said, I see what you're doing. You got some really good stuff. We'd love to have you in the program, but this is the reality of our program. You may not be satisfied by what we're going to teach you. Then we went down to the animation program. They told me, they said, we are not here to equip students for studio jobs in the animation industry.
Yeah. And
then I said, okay, if then that means you're equipping them to work at the NFB, doing their own kind of films. And, no, we're not doing that either. And I'm like, okay, what else is there? So he basically said that they are there to teach their students how to be creators and change the world with visionary kind of stuff. You don't do that in animation unless you've put in the time and you've learned the craft through many years of working in a studio under very good, talented people, and you grow into that position. It's not something you do right out of school.
Because the schools are supposed to have their own face. Yeah. So Sheridan produces a lot of skillful artists which become soldiers of Disney. And some of them work for, all their life they have just been a regular animator, which is fine. You put the bread and butter on the table. Yeah. Some other schools are trying to encourage the students to be more creative. However, again, look, I have no problem. I'm not against the students and young artists being creative, unique,
for sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to know the basic
That's
rules.
Right. Yes, you do. Yeah.
Otherwise, what comes out is just silly.
Yeah. And that's often what we see. You go to.
Otherwise, once in a while there is a jam. Coming from all these, and you see a beautiful art piece which is backed by knowledge and understanding of composition, space. I'm not even talking about perspective or realism. It could be anything. Right. It doesn't matter.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So
if you don't know the scales, if you don't know the musical harmonies, how can you make music? It's a discipline. Precisely. And they're trying to crank out students without discipline.
That's it. And nobody understands how tough is and hard is to become a good artist. Yeah. And what it requires.
And it makes me wonder how the teachers get into place who don't know this. And that's why it's being perpetuated, because the teachers don't know any different.
Could be, Could be.
So if the teachers don't know, the students aren't going to know. That's for sure. I mean, you can't go beyond your teacher, Okay, we won't go there. Okay, let's back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your background in art and your experience.
All right, so I was accepted as I said, it was a blend kind of fusion between art high school and college in the age of 15. But before that, I was taking private lessons of drawing because there were exams, which lasted a week, and then it was a huge competition, and we were 4 classes of 17, 18 students maybe, and it was probably. First of all, I wouldn't say the best time of my life, but the time when I've learned the most. I had amazing teachers. Some of them were just absolutely fantastic. And at that time, I've learned the most of perspective composition, colors, sculpting, printmaking, graphic design. So it was a great experience. Some of my classmates from that time are now all over the world, around the world, and we're still very good friends, and most of them are very good and successful artists.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I know we employ many of them, and I've worked with a lot of them.
And there was a friendly competition between us. And I have to tell you that we learn from each other as much as from our teachers. Just sharing ideas and experiences and arguing for hours and hours what is right, what is wrong. And at that time, I remember it was probably the first or the second year. So we were teenagers, right? 15, 16 years old, a bit confused. And I remember I asked one of my teachers, I said, look, how you know who is talented, who is not? Is there a secret, to find out how it works? Look, it's very simple. If you love what you do, if you're passionate about that, if you're dedicated about it, you're talented. The rest will come.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I ask that often of artists.
With the discipline, with the knowledge, and a lot of practice and so on. But that's it. If otherwise, there is no purpose, no reason actually to pursue this career.
I often ask artists how do they define talent? And most of them will say it's hard work and discipline and knowing your stuff, and loving it.
And the passion, I remember at that time, even after school, most of us, and I personally used to spend hours and hours drawing at home, experimenting with different techniques. There was not even there was some homework supposed to follow, but in many cases it was doing a lot of things on your own, the ambition to discover something.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Even here with the animators, the ones who succeed are the ones who are at home working hard to develop their own stuff.
And it's a matter of just, first of all, being curious and maybe stubborn. Because you feel stupid. Well, I can do it. How come? Of course I can. So you spend hours and hours and then
push yourself.
That's it. So that's how you build your self-esteem as well. Right?
So what was your focus in art school? Did you have a focus, or did you just come out with a general art?
The structure was the first 4 years we used to study everything. And then the fifth year, eventually you are allowed to specialize in a sense, to put more time and effort in one direction, under the guidance of some of the teachers.
Okay, cool.
So basically it was a session when you sit down with some of your teachers and say, look, probably better for you to try this, try that. There was nobody was imposing anything, right? But just kind of a wise advice.
Yeah, sure. So what was your specialty?
I was painting.
Oh, okay, good.
However, during my years in the art academy, I did graphic design. I did illustrations, a couple of books, murals, paintings on the side, and so pretty much everything.
Wow!
And that's why I came here. It was so easy to adjust to the animation.
Right.
No matter that I was never an animator, right?
Yeah. Right. So what got you into Canada? So what did you do after school when you graduated?
In Bulgaria.
In Bulgaria,
yeah. Well, I was doing illustrations, paintings, and trying to survive, basically, as an artist.
And it was easy there, or was it?
It was, for some people, it was easier, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not a member of the Communist Party at that time.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't.
Okay. But there was a market there for you guys to...
Yes, because the art was part of the socialist propaganda.
Oh, okay. All right.
So they put a lot of money into not just visual art. We're talking about literature, music, cinema, theater. And that's how a lot of really good artists were educated and created in society.
Huh.
Now, some of them disagree with certain positions in the government. However, overall, most of the artists, no matter what kind of form of art we're talking about, were extremely intelligent and smart people.
Wow.
Yeah. Now the monetary success was a different story, because again it relates to if you're part of the government, and it was,
I can see that.
A bit of nepotism, and again, you have to be a member of the Socialist Party or the Communist Party.
So how did you get to Canada?
Well, there was a vacation arranged between the Bulgarian and the Cuban government, because we didn't have passports. We didn't travel in Europe.
Oh, okay.
No. It was the only... first of all, to get a passport to travel, let's say, to the communist bloc countries like Czech Republic, Russia, it was possible. However, to travel in the West, at least you are again part of the security system and government. There was no way. And at that time, the vacations, the plane was taken off from Sofia, supposed to land in Havana, Cuba. However, it was Gander, I think. The plane stopped to refuel because there wasn't enough fuel. And I remember that the law says that all the passengers should be out because everything could happen during the
fueling. Okay. Huh.
And then some of us would just walk to the immigration door, and that's it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, cool. With $200 in my pocket, which were gone after maybe 2 days.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, but look, I consider myself to be very lucky when it comes to it.
Yeah.
It was. I wouldn't say it was easy, but. I survived the first year or two doing a lot of watercolors, hyper-realistic watercolors. Yeah.
Wow.
Landscapes, mainly.
Right.
Yeah, and some cityscapes and houses, particularly in Newfoundland.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I managed to save a little bit of money to come to Montreal. And, what can I say? I was lucky because I was never a pizza delivery as an immigrant, or I wasn't doing dishes or
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So and all of this thanks to my education. Art education. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
And a lot of my colleagues were doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
There was a huge struggle the first 2-3 years. There was a language barrier. You have to adjust to the new reality. It was very, very tough.
Yeah. Now, did you have more French than English?
No, my French is terrible.
Oh, okay, all right.
English.
Okay, so how did you end up in Montreal then?
On my way to New York.
Oh.
I never intended to stay in Montreal. I was thinking I'll be a big shot artist in New York. And then suddenly quite a few of my friends were living here, and then I got in touch with a few art dealers, so they were selling my artwork.
Okay.
And suddenly,
here you are.
Years are gone. More than 25 maybe or something. 25. Or more than that, 27, I think, something.
Wow. So somehow you got into character design, right?
I was designing many things. When I started working in the animation business, it was, I don't remember, maybe 96, 95 could be even. So I was doing pretty much everything from layouts to what the guys are doing. We're in a lot of layouts right now, but at that time everything was on paper, right?
Yeah, right.
Blue, red pencil, overlay, underlay.
Yeah,
you remember?
I remember that.
Yeah. And then I was doing some prop designs, character designs, and mainly in some point backgrounds. Because my master's degrees of painting.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of backgrounds, and there were no computers, right? Everything was done watercolor, gouache, on paper.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, start it all over again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow. So what studios were you working at?
At Cinar.
Cinar, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay.
So they gave me quite a bit of, freedom there. Mm-hmm. I'm still fine with some of the guys and the directors who used to work. And and that's how it happened, because they had this practice between projects to keep the crew, the people busy, between signing the contracts and starting the actual production. Right? Maybe there could be a week, 2 weeks. So at that time they were trying to, again, develop certain shows, just to escape the vacuum, to keep the people around, basically.
Right.
So we're doing some designs there. And 2 years later, maybe, again, I don't remember, it must be 97, 98, I was working with two artists, again, Cinar, and they were quite well established in NFB, but they were doing also as they considered commercial work in basically TV shows. Mm-hmm. And they invited me to teach, and I was a bit reluctant in the beginning. I said, teaching? I don't know, maybe it's not my cup of tea. I said, no, you're the man, so you have to. We're opening this new program because apparently there is a lack of drawing skills, painting, just visual skills. Mm-hmm. And they realized that something needs to be done. We're talking about 23, 4 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's how we started. I had first 1 class, then 2 classes, then 3. And I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
To mingle with young people,
To teach them good skills that they're not going to get elsewhere.
It's not heavy on me because I know most of the stuff by heart. So it's basically personal relation between the students and myself, the teacher.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I'm not crazy about certain new systems, PowerPoint, for example.
Yeah.
I find it a little bit cold, especially if the text is underneath. If you just show an image and you comment on it and you ask the students to comment.
Yeah, it's a slideshow.
It's a natural interaction.
Right.
However, many times I've seen the image and the text is underneath and the teacher just reads the text and I say,
what's the point of that? Print it off and hand it to them.
Exactly.
So you still teaching at Concordia?
Yes, I do.
How many classes are you teaching now?
I have 3 classes in the fall and 1 class in the winter.
Okay.
Yeah. The program used to be 6 classes, mandatory, full year, 2 semesters.
Okay.
But then there were some budget cuts.
Yeah.
And now it's reduced to 3 months, 1 semester, and then they brought back a class which was titled Advanced Drawing and Design, which used to exist, and I taught it 5-6 years ago, 7 maybe. So it's all right.
Well, everybody I've talked to who's gone to Concordia, when I told them that my kids were thinking about, or my daughter was in Concordia, every single one of them said she has to get into Valerie's classes. Take every class that she can get from Valery. And so you've got this huge reputation, whether you know it or not, that everybody who goes through Concordia, they're like, Valery's the man. You got to study under Valery.
Well, first of all, I love what I do there with the young kids. And look, I seen them myself 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I know the impact on me at that time, what the impact of my teachers, and just and it was, as I said, it was a very good interaction. I don't know if it exists now around the world, maybe in some schools, but it was very, very. I wouldn't say personally, just you consider the teachers to be almost part of your family.
Right. Yes, for sure. I mean, I still follow the guys who taught me how to draw. I have an affinity for those guys. And now they're running New Masters Academy, Steve Houston and Glenn Vilpu. Those are guys who I spent a lot of time studying under. And I tried to study under the guys they studied under when they were alive. What's his name? I forget his name anyhow. But I mean, you never forget that.
No, I
never forget that.
Great deal of satisfaction transferring what I know to the new generation.
Right.
It's
like this treasure in your past where you've got.
You need to share it.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, and you're part of that. You got a legacy. How would you counsel a graduating high school student who wants to go into a university program in art? What would you tell them to do?
Well, first of all, do they have art classes in...
Probably not. And if they did, they probably are not very good.
Well, that's one of the issues. Well, the teenagers, as I mentioned earlier, they're very confused. When you're 14, 15, a lot of them are... attracted by art because they can express their emotions, right? The hormones are flying left and right, and it's a kind of very easy way out from their concerns, emotional concerns and feelings. But it's the art education is supposed to be a serious business, very systematic, very methodical, starting again with simple things and gradually touching or learning more complicated techniques. And that's the thing which I find that perhaps is missing in some of the schools. Yes. You follow certain teaching technique.
Right.
From A, B.
Right. Most of them are like that. Yeah. So how would they know whether they're in a good school or not? Because I think a lot of them, they go into these schools spending a lot of money, expecting the school to teach them to be skilled in some facet of art, but then they come out the other end and they're not equipped at all for the art world.
Well, that's something besides the what kind of system or technique the school is practicing. Also, it comes to the simple fact that nowadays young people are kind of looking for immediate reward. Everything has to be fast.
Yeah.
They can learn everything, and then within a month or 2 months, they think that they could be great artists, or a year.
Yeah.
Which obviously is not the case.
Right.
So that's one point. The other point is the students should put a bit of effort at home.
For sure.
And if they have good teachers, perhaps they should guide them.
Yeah. But I would say
what to practice, what kind of steps they should take slowly,
right,
one by one. And because it seems to me that when I talk to my students, They know something, a little bit of something here, a little bit of something there, but they don't have the ability to build an art product.
Right.
Because it's like building a house.
Mm-hmm.
You have the foundations, and then the decoration comes.
Right.
In the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do that.
And that's something which I'm very surprised, because I still remember when I was exactly 15, 16 years old. My teacher, one of them used to say, look, you start your drawing or your painting with the broom and you finish it with the needle.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
You don't start with the needle.
Yep.
And I see a lot of talented young artists who haven't been educated properly.
Mm-hmm.
To start the paint, as I said, it's a process.
Right.
And very systematic process. You
Right.
don't start with a detail, no matter how fascinated you are by this particular feature or detail.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is how to organize the space, the composition in the format, and I'm surprised that most of the students don't know what cone of vision is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what kind of distance
they
have to respect, or necessary distance they should have between the object, picture plane, and so on. So the purely technical aspects of creating an art piece.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And what the reason is, I don't know. I mean, I assume, but
Yeah, for sure. Now, I think a lot of students will just look at art school, art college, as sort of a blanket, I'm going to get what I need in this, and not understand that there's differences in philosophies of different art schools. Can you talk to that a little bit?
I can only comment on it from Concordia's point of view, because that's what I'm teaching right now. And the good thing about all of this is that Concordia educates kind of artists who are eager to experiment, to push the envelope in more of a conceptual level, which is fine. It's perfect. I have no problem with that. I don't know how it's in the other schools. I know that Sheridan put much more emphasis on the technical skills. But again, in general, what I think is that if somebody decides to become an artist, they should start in a bit earlier age than 19, even 18 is a little bit too late.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's a matter of if you're passionate about it, if you're devoted, if you really love what you do.
Yes.
Also, there is I remember at the university, and even we had classes of pedagogy, meaning that how to recognize if a kid is talented or not, because there is a huge difference. Some kids are doing beautiful artwork, paintings or whatever it is, just purely intuitively, with no knowledge of
right.
And then some of them just give up.
Yeah.
Then it comes back when they're teenage years. However, I can share my experience. Even in kindergarten, I had some paintings, very kind of childish, naive, but some of the teachers, they kept it, and they put a little bit of album. I said, okay, to the little artist, Valery, and then we had art classes from the first, second, third, up to the high school. And the teachers are, giving quite a bit of freedom to the students, because obviously they were looking for somebody who has a potential. And a lot of paintings were kind of pretty, some of them were messy. But I remember the first time, probably was so 6, 7, about 8 years old. And I wanted, I had a desire to understand volumes, perspective, space. And suddenly my drawings and paintings started to look very ugly because they were very naive attempts, right, to create a volume you don't know anything about, semitones, reflected light, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I was looking and said, how come just a few months ago I was creating these beautiful paintings, and suddenly, because it was again an attempt to understand the reality.
Yeah.
And then my teacher at that time said, okay, do you know what? Come here. So she saw the potential, just because the painting is uglier than many other artwork of my classmates. It doesn't mean that
you're not developing.
You're not. Yeah. It was the fact that you struggle to understand the reality, and because it's a magic.
Yeah.
Don't forget, on two-dimensional surface to create three-dimensional image.
Right.
It's a magic.
Yeah, for sure. And even so, I mean, you're going to have movements where you progress, and then you're going to try something and push yourself, and your stuff's going to go downhill. Exactly. And it's just a natural part of your development.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But just the intellectual struggle to really do something to understand the reality,
right, and
to put it on this two-dimensional surface.
That's right. Yeah.
And then, as I said, my teacher was smart enough. She was a middle-aged lady kind of, and said, you know what, keep going, and
you're gonna get it. You're gonna get there.
Yeah. And then I started, slowly, and
that's one thing I teach my kids. I say, don't be afraid to fail. If you're not failing, you're not learning. You're gonna have some stinkers, and that's just part of the process. Don't get so beat up by it. Move on.
And there's the other thing, when I think to a lot of students, and no matter how talented they are, have been given a freedom too early.
Yeah.
And then they become kind of satisfied, and a lot of them say, "Oh, that's my style."
Yeah.
You don't have a style.
Yeah, they hit the ceiling. It's going nowhere.
Just the way you push your pencil, it's not a style.
Right. That's true. It's like your signature. You got a style for your signatures. Can you say that?
Yeah. What style? The style includes, first of all, philosophy.
Yeah.
What is your message to the audience? Then space, color, composition.
How you handle all of it and put it
together. Just because you just reach a perfection in one particular thing, it's not your style.
No, it's not your style at all. No.
Because the style is a statement, and it's a very, very complex issue to deal with. Yeah. And it takes sometimes years and years. I know that I consider myself to be a relatively skillful artist, but my personal, I reached some kind of achievement in my personal life when I was over 30. Then I said, okay, do you know what? That's my statement. There is something which I would like to explore. Something which is, I wouldn't say new or unique, but something which really I find interesting and maybe unusual.
Yeah.
But after years and years of trying different styles and doing, basically creating all kinds of forms of art.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of artists, they have different periods,
Yeah. So that's how it is, and again, there's a huge difference also if we're talking about commercial art or conceptual art.
Yes. Right.
However, I would like to bring the point we discussed a few minutes ago, that most of the successful conceptual artists were also very good commercial artists.
Yes, they were. They weren't limited by one.
Yeah, exactly.
One path.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it needs to be taken into consideration. People should know a little bit more, and no matter how what the art galleries or a lot of art promoters are doing.
Yeah.
because it could be just a very temporary trend, and then tomorrow is gone.
And then what are you going to do?
Exactly. Can you make a living out of it?
Right.
Or maybe you can have your picture and your name, the cover of any art magazine for a week or two, and then
and that's it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Valery?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on this. If you're considering going to school to study art, animation, or film, you need to research your school options. Talk to graduates and find out what the job prospects were for them. You can usually find students today posting their work on Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. See what they're doing. Investigate the instructors and be highly suspect of instructors who have no significant professional experience. They may have PhDs in this or that, but art is a trade, and there's only so much a school can provide you in preparing for that trade. If your instructors have no professional experience outside of the educational system, they're not going to be helpful in bridging that gap for you. Look at their work, watch their films, and ask yourself, is this the kind of person you want to train you? Although I don't completely agree with the platitude that those who can't teach, sometimes it's true. Tonic DNA is an animation studio based in Montreal. We're always on the lookout for talented artists to join our team, those who are committed to artistic excellence. You can find Tonic on the web at tonicdna.com. This has been the Story Driven Arts Podcast. For more resources, visit our website at storydrivenarts.com. Music is by Lee Rosevear.